Yes, it's the final week of October, which means we have the World Series, college football, the NFL, NHL action, the NBA, UFC, soccer, and let's not forget about that college basketball right around the corner. Since we're almost obliged to have a Halloween commercial, let's make it a scary good one. Until midnight on October 31st, no costume is required to get a 31% discount on one all-access package of your choice at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo using coupon code BOO31 at checkout. This coupon will save you over $12 on a one-day all-access that includes any 5% plays. And it'll also save you over $18 off the 3-day all-access. Or why not go big and save over $90 off the 30-day all-access? Or perhaps take over business for the next year by saving over $600 with a 12-month all-access package, coming out to just $3.77 per day for the next 365 days. Coupon code BOO31 expires at midnight on Halloween. But remember to use it wisely, as this coupon can only be used once at WagerTalk and once at Sports Memo. From my friend and I, happy Halloween.
Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. We are happy to have you here on WagerTalk TV with us. I'm Andrew McInnis, and you are watching Puck Time. Today, of course, as always, I have Carmine Bianco with me, and in his usual Thursday spot, we have Bryan Leonard joining us here to break down a handful of games for this NHL slate tonight, including the Canadiens at the Buffalo Sabres. We have the Blues and Predators, Capitals, Dallas Stars, and the Winnipeg Jets and the Los Angeles Kings. Some good games to break down, lots of great situations. Always good to hear from Bryan, and we'll try and find some winners for you guys. And before we start this show off, I had something I wanted to mention, because this is something to do with client releases and getting good numbers and stuff like that. I just wanted to kind of clear the air on something more personal for me, I guess, with my clients. But so yesterday, I was super lucky to get a push with the over ahead with the Lightning and Ducks game at 6. It was 1.9 seconds left when there was an empty net hit. Unfortunately, I'm guessing a lot of people that probably waited to play that in the later parts of the afternoon or later parts of the morning even, they would have gotten 6.5. So I want people to know that I don't put up packages. I will never advertise on the website, my 6 if it's all 6.5 widely everywhere else. However, with clients, as long as I know for a decent amount of time people are going to be able to bet a certain number, I will release that overnight or early in the morning. So a lot of people, they quite often, they wonder, where'd you get that number? When did you get that number? Well, the biggest advice I give to people at all that are starting to get into sports betting, and I tell my friends with NFL, the biggest mistake you make is betting Sunday morning. Same thing with NHL. I'm not saying you have to always lock in your picks the night before, but just make sure that you're aware of the odds. Take a peek. It's something I always tell people to do. Take a peek at the odds, and you can learn how these things move, how the numbers move, not just the totals, but the sides as well. So that pick, that never went up for purchase. That was just for all access. And I do understand that many clients probably got the 6.5 there. But it is important to, try and wake up, check those emails, check out the scoreboards, and check out the odds screen, because I was happy to get a push last night, Carm, on that one. And sometimes a push feels like a win. I understand you had Tampa Bay, though, man. So congratulations to you.
Yeah, it completed a 3-0 sweep in NHL for me, and a 5-0 sweep overall. So it's good to be off to a good start for the week, and we'll just try and keep it going. It's funny that you mentioned make sure you check your emails and stuff. On Mondays, I think it was Monday's show, we were talking about like Pittsburgh and Calgary. And I referenced, and then as we signed off, because it was my best bet taking Calgary, I referenced the fact of like strength of schedules. And I talked about like Pittsburgh's strength of schedule wasn't that great. Calgary's was much better. And then as we signed off, I realized that my numbers were incorrect. The strength of schedules were still what it was. But when you actually talk about a strength of schedule, you should never include, like Pittsburgh was 8-16-5. I said the teams that played Pittsburgh were 8-16-5. 4 of those 16 were actually losses to Pittsburgh. So you don't actually include that in the strength of schedule. It should be like 8-12-5. So I sign off and I'm like, oh. So I looked at the chat. I'm like, did anyone point that out? I'm like, oh, they didn't. And then checking emails, Brian Leonard is like, I'm not sure what kind of crazy math you guys are doing up there in Canada, but you don't include those losses into the strength of schedule. I'm like, oh God, it figures. Brian of all guys would have caught that because he's an analytics guy as well too. So welcome to the show, Brian, and thank you for keeping me in my place.
Yeah, well, I figured I would DM you as opposed to getting into the chat and embarrassing you in front of anybody. Because I've done the same thing. It happens. You forget about it, but yeah, you knew what was the right thing. You just didn't include it. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm on Twitter a lot, and when people use the wrong math or something, it kind of irritates me a little bit. But hey, I make mistakes in a lot of other ways, so it happens.
Have you been noticing that quite a bit to start this year off, Brian? Just about strength of schedule and teams that have had maybe home stands to start things off or long road trips that aren't doing well. What have you noticed, not just really asking you about teams, but just situationally so far to start off this year?
Well, a lot of times people will look at a team and they'll see they got a great record. And I said, well, yeah, they played every game at home, and look at the teams they played. You have to go more than the records. If Vegas, the world now, if the world could book people and all you could do is bet on teams based on their record, the books would be so much more rich than they are right now, because that's where you get your advantages is when you're training a team that played a lesser schedule and you go against them, or played a tougher schedule and you go on them. That's what we do. That's what we do for a living. We pick our spots. We pick our prices. There's even a couple games today where I love the teams, but the prices are out of range. So you've got to be able to set yourself up and try to find some spots where there's value. And they don't always win, especially if you play underdogs. But you don't want to be betting into too many games in which are overpriced, and you'll end up losing money even though you have a winning record.
I think we're still at that part of the season where we're trying to figure out each team. We haven't seen enough of each team, at least for me. I'll speak for myself, where I've been pretty much hovering around dead even on the year, and I'm not happy with those results by any means, but I'm certainly looking forward to the more games I watch, the more I see from each team, the more information I can obtain, and hopefully that leads to winners down the road. But speaking of winners, let's talk about today and the first game, the Montreal Canadiens, the Buffalo Sabres. Carm, you really picked a barn burner here for this one, two elite teams. Hey, I'm happy about it. Montreal plus 145. We've got Buffalo minus 170, total at 6.5, as we're going to expect from most games that feature both of these teams. I'll go to you, Carm, for your thoughts. I just want to mention real quick, Jake Allen, 2.62 goals against average, 0.92 save percentage. Eric Comrie, he's listed as probable, 3.51 goals against average, 0.91 save percentage. So kind of an interesting matchup here as far as the goaltenders go, and I'm curious your thoughts here on your home team, the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, Andrew, this is probably one of those games where, you're a Habs fan, I'm a Sabres fan, where we just have a gentleman's bet on this game. Loser shaves their head again. We had that one, I think, last year, and it worked out really well for me. But a lot of people said we should never make that bet again. So we won't. But with that said, you're coming to town next year to watch the Canadiens and the Leafs. So we can always make a dinner bet based on the result of this game, even though I really don't want to, because I think this is a bad spot for the Sabres coming home off that Western road trip. And for two reasons. Sometimes, Andrew, when you look at very good teams coming off a road trip, I don't use this angle, but a team that I don't consider a playoff contender, a team that I figure that is going to be in sort of that 9th, 10th, 11th spot at the end of the year, where the Sabres very well could be, more so probably 10th or 11th for the Sabres, is that they had a very good road trip, winning in Calgary, winning in Edmonton, winning in Vancouver before losing their final one against the Kraken. Now you travel back and you're on 1 day's rest and playing again. And I just think it's a bad spot for them, the price. And we talked about this last night. Minus 170 on the Sabres. I don't want to lay 170 on the Sabres. Even if Montreal was the worst team in the league, I don't want to lay 170 for them. Even if I think the Sabres are going to win this game, I wouldn't lay that amount on them. Last 6 games at home, they have beaten Montreal straight up 5 of the last 6 games at home. I just don't want to lay this big a price. We could see goals in this game, and that's probably where I'm leaning to the over 6.5 in this one. The interesting thing is, Andrew, I think we talked about this last night as well too. One of the coaches talked about in their game that how do you recover from a long road trip? The coach actually said, and you can name the coach if you want afterwards. The coach actually said that it takes, science says that it takes 1 day for every hour of time change. So 1 day for every hour. So if you're coming back from a long road trip and it's the time change is 3 hours, that the players aren't back to full strength for 3 days. He says that is science. So who am I to argue with what a coach says? They obviously know best. I'm not a coach, but so that was interesting in as far as that goes. For me, Andrew, over 6.5 in this one. I'm going to look for some goals and a barn burner from the Sabres and the Montreal Canadiens. Bryan, give me your thoughts on this one.
I'm trying to find a way to play Montreal here. I agreed with you on your Buffalo situation. You got a team that's not used to winning, goes out on the road. Now, they did lose the last game they played, but they're coming home. The fans are going to love them. They're pretty high on themselves, and now they're playing a team that they have dominated at home, as you pointed out. And you have a Montreal team who has been at home for 4 straight, and they're going on the road. Well, the last 2 times they went on the road, in fact, the only 2 times they've been on the road this season, they scored 0 and 1. So if you're Montreal, you're well rested because you played your last 4 games at home. You know you have not looked well on the road this year. And Andrew has pointed out in the past, because he's a Montreal fan, he's much more willing to play Montreal at home than on the road. So if Andrew knows that, and we know that, the players know that. So I think you're going to get a great effort out of Montreal here. Buffalo may be a little sluggish, as you pointed out. Don't know if I want to bet on Montreal for the entire game, but I'm going to take a look at either the first or the first 2 periods, something in that regards, and see if I can get some plus money on Montreal. But that would be the only way I would look in this game. As much as growing up in Cleveland, I rooted for Buffalo. Other than Vegas, Buffalo is one of the teams I like to see have success. The line's a little bit overpriced right now, so it's either Montreal in some way, probably first period, or nothing for me in this game.
Andrew, and good luck on that one, Bryan. I just wanted to say, because the name, and I was hoping you could pick it out. I was drawing a blank, but it was last night's game when I was watching Tampa Bay and Anaheim, and it was the Anaheim coach, Dallas Eakins, that said the science has told them that it takes them 1 day for every hour of time change when you're returning home from a long trip. So again, it's something that I'm going to look up. There's got to be some research on this, but yeah. I just thought it was interesting to hear that during the game last night.
It is very useful. And, as Teddy always says, it's funny when a coach or a player will give you a piece of information useful for betting when they don't even know they're doing it, right? And that's useful for us as sports bettors. We don't even, he doesn't realize he's helping us out, obviously. That's a coach that's been a part of the Anaheim organization for a while, so I'm sure he's been on many East Coast road trips. But, yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what you guys said there, look, last game the Montreal played, we talked about it on the show, and I didn't end up going to the window with it or releasing for clients, but I did talk about the plus 1.5. And I've talked with you guys on the show about how plus 1.5s just don't seem to be for me, because I'm the guy that always gets lucky with the empty net goal, but if I play the plus 1.5, it always happens against me. And that's really what happened for the Montreal Canadiens kind of in their last game, where they got the empty net goal scored against them. And you look at kind of how they played, though, against, Pittsburgh, an exciting win in overtime. Following that, they put up 6 goals and just embarrassed the Coyotes. And then things just went downhill a little bit. So to me, this is kind of a recipe for bounce back, I guess. And these are all theories that we create, but you lose an embarrassing one to Dallas 5-2. Minnesota comes in and pretty much shuts you down. Your power play is struggling right now. What Bryan said about me liking to bet them more at home is very true. But sometimes you almost like to get a team that's frustrated with their last couple of games at home. They get a chance to go on the road. And let's be honest here, even though they've played pretty well so far, they get to play a lesser opponent. Maybe not less than them, but, not really a top tier. Definitely not as good as the Wild or Pittsburgh or Dallas. That's for sure. And we're getting, plus 150 at some shops, right? So this will be one of the first times this year where I do go ahead and take Montreal on the money line in this game. And a lot of it has to do with Buffalo really coming off, like Carm said, a successful road trip. Because as much as like he talked about, you look for this with the bottom tier teams and the teams that aren't great, even Colorado can come off a 7-game road trip and still come back and beat the living crap out of somebody. But if it's a team like Buffalo, and I think that Bryan made a good point too. I mean, they're going to come back. They're going to feel good in front of their fans. They're going to think, you know what, we're playing good hockey. Well, they looked pretty flat against Seattle, guys. And Seattle hadn't had a really good season until that game. Seattle had a good start, good finish. They played that a full 60 minutes. I don't think Buffalo made that game close by any means. So I will say Montreal's getting their chances. But one thing I want to mention, and Bryan, I know we have plenty more games, but I wanted to throw this to you really quick because, each guest brings something different, and I love having these conversations with you. So I'm not a huge fan of, as much the expected goals with the, on Money Puck, they have that, during the games going on. You can check, okay, the first period, how many goals were supposed to happen? I like looking at the goals saved above average. That's one of my favorite tools for the goaltenders because that just goes to show that one guy is just playing, very, very well. Jake Allen's having a really good year. And everybody in Montreal, as you know, I'm a huge fan, loves talking about Carey Price and, what the deal is with him. But Jake Allen's quietly been a good goaltender. When you look at a goalie like that and you look at his numbers, how long do you take? Because he has, I don't think he's at the top, his goal save above average. But how long does it take for you to think, you know what, this guy is saving more than he should? Or do you just say he's playing well, let's ride him?
Yeah, it's very similar to what you see in baseball with starting pitchers a lot of times. A guy will have a 5-run ERA, then all of a sudden his first 3 games out of the slot, he's got a 2.5-run ERA. You wonder if he's made changes or if it's just a small sample size. That's something you have to take into account. You can compare it a little bit with the other goalies on the team and see if their changes are any better. Because sometimes the defense, the coaching changes overall are going to help a team like that. I know that was what Vegas wanted when they brought in their new coach, is to make it so the defense is better, protect the goalie better, and it's worked out very well for them. So yeah, it's more, there's not actual numbers you can look at to show it, but it's sort of a feel. And so a lot of times you'll see handicappers talk about using prior season knowledge, the stats for that for a certain amount of time until they get into so many games for the season. That's really what you got to look at and say, well, it's still an early season. What has he done in the past? And see if he could, when you watch the games, one of the big advantages of watching the games is one of the announcers may talk about that. And you can always learn in that regard.
It's an interesting stat to look at, that's for sure. The goals save above average. I like looking at that quite a bit. Let's jump into our next one here with St. Louis and Nashville. Bryan, of course, we have the St. Louis Blues, second half of a back-to-back for them tonight. Carmine's pointed out how profitable that's been. Sometimes, you got to keep it simple and look towards that angle. You'd think that is be more profitable and effective later in the year, but I guess not right now. St. Louis plus 150, Nashville minus 180. Nashville, a team I'm certainly still trying to figure out kind of who they're going to be this year, and I haven't really had too many wagers involving them. But what I do know is that they're gonna hang around with a team like St. Louis. They do have lots of speed. What are your thoughts here, and how much does it impact you that they played last night?
Yeah, it definitely has an impact on the game. I had one play in the NHL yesterday, and it was Edmonton. Never fell behind in the game when that game 3-1 against St. Louis. It's a tough situation for St. Louis, played in the second of a back-to-back. In fact, I believe this is third game in 4 days. And they're going up against a Nashville team who is yet to win a game in North America. They had those 2 games in Europe where they beat San Jose. But since they've gotten back, they have lost every single game, including a shootout loss to the LA Kings. And now they've had 4 days off before playing St. Louis. I know what kind of effort I'm going to get tonight out of Nashville. The line's also telling you what kind of effort you're going to get out of Nashville. I don't know how much value is remaining because this line has gone up. A lot of people have seen the same thing as I have. So hopefully we can get a little bit of buyback on St. Louis the rest of the day and get a little bit better number here. But I want to play Nashville only because I know that this is the team that was fully focused on this game. They got plenty of time of rest. And St. Louis, it would have worked out better if St. Louis would have won yesterday for this game. Coming off a loss is different than coming off of a win. But still, the situation is clearly in the position of Nashville. Problem is it the right line at this time?
That's for sure. I mean, the line definitely plays a factor in this game. I mean, it doesn't every game, but the situation screams Nashville. It's just a matter of what we think about the price in this one. Even though St. Louis on the second half of back-to-back, Carm, something tells me we might see a defensive effort in this one. Nashville, well-rested, probably look to come out and play solid defensively in their own end. What do you think here, Carm, side or total?
Yeah, the one thing, first of all, is I agree with Bryan. I think Nashville is the play here, whether we've been priced out of it or we hope that throughout the day maybe some more money comes in or some people start buying back on St. Louis and we get a lower line, get it down to like 160-ish or 155, and then it's a definite play. Another way of looking at it is you can take Nashville in regulation, 60 minutes, and that price right now is at about even money. The one thing is interesting. You look at Nashville and you're like, wow, 5 straight losses. Since that trip to open up the season in Prague, neither of the teams that played there, San Jose or Nashville, has looked good at all returning home. Nashville's gone 0-5 since returning off of those 2 wins in Prague. San Jose has gone 2-5 in the 7 games since returning from Prague. Now, you could probably expect it from San Jose. You don't expect it from Nashville. But if you watch the Nashville game against Philadelphia, even though they lost that game 3-1 and were down 3-0 before they got a late power play goal, they actually looked much better than they did in the previous games against the Jackets, where they looked flat-footed. So they played a little bit better. Now you've got them on 4 days rest before this game, and you got St. Louis coming in, and as far as the goalies go, if you're looking at what the projected goalies are of Greiss and Saros, obviously the goaltending advantage here is with Nashville in this one. Greiss has only played 1 game, didn't look that great in that 4-0 loss against Winnipeg. So, you got to lean on Nashville to win here. It's up to you whether you want to lay the number with Nashville and you get the full game, including overtime, or whether you take the regulation line. I would lean to the regulation line. I think if they get it done, they get it done in 60 minutes. So that's where I would lean in this one.
And now the question we ask ourselves, really, what we're seeing from Nashville right now and what we've seen from them this season so far since they got back from Prague, is this who they are? And we'll have to find out, like I mentioned at the top of the show. We don't know who teams really are just quite yet. Because if we did, the Flyers would be a playoff team. And we all know that's not happening. So
yeah. And Andrew, and that's the thing is normally, and we see it across other sports, if you want to look at other sports, is the travel from, I get it, North America wants to have games in Europe. And if you're going to do it at the start of the season instead of doing it in the middle of the season. The NFL does it with games in London and once in a while in Germany. And normally those teams coming in the NFL coming back from a game in London get the following week off. This year that hasn't happened. A lot of the teams have had to play, and their records, at least against the spread, have been terrible in the NFL. So, with that said, it taxes players. It's different. You're going to, a 5 or 6 hour time change is a lot different than a 3 hour time change. And we talked about it at the top of the show. Dallas Eakins talking about time changes and what it does science-wise to a player's body. So these are professional athletes. We always think it's fine, just get on the ice and play. Sometimes it takes them a while to get their legs back. We just don't know. So we'll see what we get out of Nashville tonight.
Let's jump into the Washington Capitals as they visit Dallas to take on the Stars here tonight. Looking at this one, we do have the Dallas Stars as home favorites. Washington listed at around plus 135, minus 120, 25-ish ballpark range for Dallas. And total is at 6 right now. Guys, 4 of the last 5 games for the Capitals have gone over the posted total. We have seen the Dallas Stars, especially in games they've played well, play a lot better defensively. Even in games they really have lost, like that one against Boston, was still a low-scoring game. So to me, the reason why I bring up these trends, I always say that no matter what the sport might be, the better team dictates the tempo of the game. The better team dictates the up and down, how many shots are going towards the net. And this year, I think the better team is Dallas. They've got a really good team. They're well-rounded, a good defensive core, and lots of snipers on offense. And let's not forget a great goaltender. You take a look at Dallas's wins. Take up on Winnipeg. They hold them to 1. Nashville hold them to 1. Toronto hold them to 3. Montreal 2. I mean, even when they're losing games, they're playing very well defensively. When you look at Washington, even when they're winning games, they're giving up goals. And that's not something I like from a team that's going to go ahead and play a defensive juggernaut like the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are a really good team at winning low-scoring games. And Prez talked about it with us yesterday. He wants his money on teams that are capable of winning both. Right now, the Washington Capitals are not capable of winning both. I would not expect the Capitals to win any hockey games right now unless they're scoring 4 goals. Good luck getting 4 goals on Jake Ottinger. That's an issue I have with them. I think it's a good spot for Dallas at home here. I like this price. It's reasonable. And quite frankly, Carm, I just think it's been kind of an up and down roller coaster of a year for this Capitals team, where at least for Dallas, we've seen a lot more consistency. So give me the Stars here at home. What are your thoughts, Carm?
Yeah, Andrew, I can't really disagree with you on this one. And mine is going to be very quick, and you could look at it as almost a square opinion. But the fact is Dallas doesn't make very many mistakes when they're playing. If you want to beat Dallas, you need your full lineup out there. You need to roll out your lines. You need some secondary scoring, especially if they're going to be those low-scoring 3-1, 3-2 type games. Backstrom's still out. Connor Brown's still out. Tom Wilson still out for this team. That's 3 of their top 6 guys. They've still found a way to win, but the better goalie in this one, for me, is Ottinger. He doesn't make much mistakes. Comfort does. You got Dallas at home, and you have a Washington team that isn't full strength, and the price is right. So I'm taking the minus 125, and I'm not even going to think about it. Give me the Dallas Stars tonight. Bryan?
I believe it's an agreement for all 3 of us. We talked earlier about the Buffalo situation where they go on the road, win 3 out of 4, come home fat and sassy, as Marco would say. We've got a Dallas team who went on the road and lost 3 of 4, and they come back. They are playing the 3rd game in 4 days. They do have a key offensive contributor that's going to be a game-time decision in this game. But the spot screams Dallas in my regard. They've played 2 home games so far this season against Nashville and Winnipeg. And they hold them both to 1 goal apiece. This is a team, when they're playing at home especially, they know what they want to do. They want to beat you in a low-scoring game. Andrew made a terrific point about Washington. When I see Washington play, Washington's trying to outscore the opposition. They're shorthanded right now. If you take a look at their advanced stats, Washington's been pretty fortunate so far this year. You take a look at the expected goals, and they're not nearly as good as they are on what the results have been, which happens a lot when you've got excellent shooters. But this is a team right now playing a little bit over their head in Washington. I'm looking to fade Washington, and this is a really good spot for us to do it. The negative being 3rd game in 4 days for Dallas, but this is a team playing at home where I want to back them. I think from a defensive standpoint, as Andrew pointed out, there's only one way you could go. And when you're playing Dallas at home, you've got to assume the games are going to go under the total and play off of that. And that's what we're looking at tonight. I think Dallas is a nice spot here.
And Dallas certainly isn't happy coming home by any means, like you mentioned,
Right.
Brian. If they're looking for a win right away and looking for it right now. Last game here coming up, and then we'll get into some best bets and more here at the end of the show. Let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets and the Los Angeles Kings. You know, Brian, every single handicapper or fan or whatever, I think, has that one team, or at least I have that one team that just every season I seem to just struggle with. You know, and for me, that team happens to be the Winnipeg Jets. And you know, lately, the past few years, they have been very up and down as well. But when I look at this Winnipeg Jets team, I feel like I know what they're capable of. I feel like I know what they could do if they play at their best. And I talk about how, you know, these expected goals and stuff like that can be a factor, but for certain teams, it might not be. Winnipeg is that team for me because they'll lose a game 4-1 and then they'll win their next game 4-0. And then the game, you know, prior to their loss, they get, you know, blown out and then they'll win again. I mean, they're a team that could not be more inconsistent. That's something that kind of bothers me a little bit. But you look at this Los Angeles Kings team, you talk about a team being satisfied. They just beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Lightning that went to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 straight years in a row. And they played a pretty good game in that one. You know, the Kings have actually been off to a pretty good start. But here's my problem, Brian. I feel in my gut it's a sneaky underdog day for the Jets. So I need your help here with this one because I've never really had a good read on the Jets, but I feel like this might be a spot for them. Do you agree here?
I've had pretty good luck on the Jets. When people don't give them a chance, that's the time they come out and play very well. The problem is, I think this game's lined correctly. The Kings are the better team, but not by as much as what most people think. They are coming off that win over Tampa Bay. That was their first game back from 5 straight on the road. So you can definitely see a little bit of a letdown for the Kings here playing Winnipeg. But the line is about what I thought it should be. If I was to play the game, I'd play Winnipeg. I just think these two teams are closer, in my regard, closer than what the public thinks and what was expected out of these two teams. As there hasn't been a lot of talk about Winnipeg possibly going to the playoffs, whereas the Kings, you know, they're talking about them. They should clearly be a playoff team this year. I don't think there's that much of a difference here. You take a look at the expected goals and everything. The line should be a little bit cheaper than what it is right here. If I was to play this, I would play Winnipeg, but out of the games that we've discussed so far, this is probably the one I have least amount of confidence in. But you could be right here. Winnipeg, could be their spot.
Hey, Carm, give us something on this game because Winnipeg, I call them top heavy. I call them inconsistent. And I love the way Brian said that. Whenever people start to doubt them is when they play well. It's usually what this team does. Is it a good spot or a bad spot tonight for the Jets?
I'm not necessarily convinced it's a bad spot or a good spot for them. I think Winnipeg's they're one of the toughest teams to read, Andrew. They really are. I said that at the beginning of the year. I couldn't figure out this team, and it seems like in the short sample size of me betting on them, they lose, and betting against them, they win. So I'm likely staying off this one. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. And that's usually tough with LA King games at home, but I just don't see how they get to 6 in this one. It's likely not going to make my betting card, but it's the only play that I would take in this game is the under 6. You won't find any 6.5s out there, unfortunately. And there's a reason why is Winnipeg is that type of team that a lot of their games are going to be lined at 6, unless they're playing Edmonton Oilers or Calgary Flames or the Colorado Avalanche. So, with that said, I'm going to take the 6, look for a lower scoring game in this one. I do want to mention, just before we get into that best bet segment, that our regular Tuesday guest, Don Buster, has a 5% play up in NHL tonight over at Sports Memo, and you can get that over at Sports Memo. Just click on Buster's page and pick that one up. I don't know what it is, but I wish Buster the best of luck, unless he's obviously against me on one of my plays.
Yeah, I wish him best of luck unless he is somehow fading me.
Yes.
No, I wish Buster's had a great run across all sports, really, with his 5% plays, guys. So go check that out. He knows his hockey, and he's very selective with his big plays. So good luck to Buster over at Sports Memo. Guys, real quick as well, I just got an alert here on my phone about Samuel Montembeault will be starting for the Montreal Canadiens. So after I spent about 3 or 4 minutes talking about Jake Allen, it seems like that was pointless because he is not starting tonight. So if you're interested in betting the Montreal Canadiens now, I do believe you could probably wait and get an even better number, though, unless you guys have any disagreements with that. But I think that that's definitely a factor. Montembeault is definitely a little step down from Jake Allen, that's for sure. Let's jump into best bets and, of course, talk about what's going on at WagerTalk.com. Of course, some great deals going on, as always. You can take advantage of some 7-day or 30-day passes. But, Bryan, I'll start with you. What's going on for you this weekend, tonight, and overall, how are things going these days?
Everything's been going great. Number 3 in the NHL right now, number 2 in the NBA. Everything but college football. I had a 5% last week on TCU. Had to play with a third-string quarterback for most of the game, so it didn't work out. But yeah, you mentioned Buster with his 5%. He was the other day. He was on here, and he had a 5%. I believe he won 5-2. So he's a guy you want to bet when he's got a big play. So let's get another winner for Buster here. I've got a 5% in college football going on Saturday. Been very good on everything overall, except for last Saturday. I was terrible. Other than that, I think I've won every game for the last 5-6 days. So let's bounce back on Saturday, get you another 5% winner in college football. Haven't put up my card today yet. There's been a couple we've discussed on the show here that may make it, but I'm still working on today's card. I do want to go back to the best bet on a game that we talked about earlier, and that was the Washington-Dallas game. As if you didn't listen earlier, we're looking to fade Washington, a team whose numbers aren't as strong as what they've shown so far. And I didn't mention, but Washington struggled in Dallas. I believe Dallas is 14-3-4 at home against Washington the last few years. So Washington struggles playing in Dallas. Dallas coming back home after losing on the road their last 2 games. I expect a really good effort out of Dallas here. You mentioned the scoring. I think we're going to get a low-scoring game. Low-scoring game definitely favors Dallas in this game against Washington. So give me Dallas at what I think is a pretty cheap number here.
Love to see it. Dallas on the money line in a great situational spot. Bryan, it's always great to see you. And hats off for how many sports you manage and handicap and do well. And quite frankly, all of them, it seems like. And the full transparency as well. You always bring that, whether it's a win or a loss. And I think we all truly do respect that, Bryan. So looking forward to a big NHL season and NBA from you, as always. But it's going to be a really, really great year. Dallas on the money line for a best bet for Bryan. And speaking of running hot and doing very well, and also someone that's very transparent, Carm is on a 5-0 soccer run just this week. Of course, there is some soccer action going on today, Carm. But what else do you have going on, man?
Yeah, heating up to finish off the year. I thought it would be a really good finish to the year, especially with the World Cup just around the corner. So I'm looking forward to that. 3 plays up this afternoon, going off at 12:45 in Europa League. We'll see if we can keep these tournament plays going well. A couple plays up in NHL, and there's a couple prop plays that are going to be put up as well too. I had a couple prop shot on goal prop plays that won last night, along with Tampa Bay, and we pulled out the Don Buster first period on Tampa Bay yesterday, -0.5 plus 155. I'm going to try the same thing again tonight. I'm going to take the Edmonton Oilers tonight in the first period, -0.5 plus 135 against the Chicago Blackhawks. Hawks are playing well to start the season, but I like this spot for the Edmonton Oilers. Skinner played in that game against St. Louis. You've got Jack Campbell in goal for them tonight, listed as the starter. He's only had 1 bad game thus far in his 5, and that was the one against the St. Louis Blues where he allowed, I think, 4 goals on 11 shots. Other than that, he has been good. His only other loss was a 2-0 loss to the Blues. I'm going to take the Edmonton Oilers to get out on top of the Blackhawks early with a minus a half, plus 135 first period play. And let's see if we can make it 4-0 this week on our show best bets.
Awesome stuff, Carm. I love those first period plays. It's a great way to turn a favorite and a, kind of more of an expensive price into a great number. And you're on a roll with those, just like Don Buster. So maybe you guys can match your first period plays together. Next week, you guys can match your backgrounds, get the rainbow background going, and you guys can be first period betting buddies there. Look, for me, excuse me, I've got UFC plays going up today. It was kind of a rough weekend last weekend, but it seemed like it was just a disastrous of a card for lots of people. Still number 2 at WagerTalk in UFC overall in 2022. I've got a play on the World Series going up after this show. A handful of plays for today in the NHL, but still waiting for some goaltenders to be confirmed. But my best bet for today's show, I'm going to look at the over 3.5 team total for the Florida Panthers, as they are off a loss that was completely shocking to a lot of people against the Blackhawks. They did not play to their expectations by any means. They did have some chances, but even them, they were not happy after the game. And it's early in the year. You cannot take those teams lightly. Carter Hart is confirmed for the Philadelphia Flyers, guys, and I mentioned that these days the goal save above average advanced analytical thing to look at has been something I've been keeping my eye on. Well, Carter Hart currently ranks number 3 in that category with 6 saves above average. And I think that when you look at what he's doing, I don't think he can maintain that for the Philadelphia Flyers. The Panthers will come in town. They'll be motivated, and they'll put up some goals tonight on the Philadelphia Flyers. Look at the team total over for them tonight. Guys, awesome show. Lots of fun, lots of information, some interesting games to break down. We are back tomorrow for our last show of the week, and it will be the debut of the 6 and 60 segment with Carmine, at least for this season. And I can't wait for that. So to recap these power plays, Bryan has Dallas, Carmine with Edmonton first period minus a half, plus 135, and I'm rocking with Florida, their team total over 3.5. On behalf of Bryan and Carmine, I'm Andrew, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Boo! Yes, it's the final week of October, which means we have the World Series, college football, the NFL, NHL action, the NBA, UFC, soccer, and let's not forget about that college basketball right around the corner. Since we're almost obliged to have a Halloween commercial, let's make it a scary good one. Until midnight on October 31st, no costume is required to get a 31% discount on one all-access package of your choice at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo using coupon code BOO31 at checkout. This coupon will save you over $12 on a one-day all-access that includes any 5% plays. And it'll also save you over $18 off a 3-day all-access. Or why not go big and save over $90 off a 30-day all-access? Or perhaps take over business for the next year by saving over $600 with a 12-month all-access package, coming out to just $3.77 per day for the next 365 days. Coupon code BOO31 expires at midnight on Halloween. But remember to use it wisely, as this coupon can only be used once at WagerTalk and once at Sports Memo. For my friend and I, happy Halloween.